what does it mean to be a super being, right? We often live as in the context of our limited selves or our small selves because we've been, trained, conditioned, programmed, indoctrinated, imprinted by society to live in a small, condensed, tightly knit way where we fit into these boxes and labels and, try to wear these different masks and identities in which we deem to be appropriate by society's standards.
Welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I'm dedicated to helping you take control of your life. Together, we'll explore practical tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories to help you overcome obstacles and achieve your goals. Making small changes is possible and can lead to big results. Are you ready? Let's go do this. Well, friends, I have the pleasure of welcoming Christopher August to the show today. He's an author of a great book called Master Your Breath, Transform Your Life. He co-founded an app called Beats and Breath and has over 15 years experience in personal development, holistic wellness, and somatic healing. He's on a mission to help people find their soul's true purpose and create the life that they want. Christopher, I listened to your interview with Alex Zek on the Way Forward podcast. It was very captivating, loved it. And anyone listening, I would encourage you guys go out and listen to that podcast as well. So Christopher, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Sue. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited. So let's start with your journey. Weave in there your life transformative experiences that led you to where you are today, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, where do I start? Life for all of us, I feel we all have our own hero's journey, our own version of our hero's journey. And, my hero's journey has taken me through many different twists and turns, ups and downs, highs and lows. And, through all of that, of course, learning so much about myself, because the challenges, the struggles, the adversity is really what shapes us and helps to mold us into who we are. And, I've never really shied away from the darkness or from the challenges or just really lean into it because I know there's gold to be mined within that. And so for me personally, my awakening journey, my healing journey, whatever you want to call it, started back in about 2009, 2010, and then really started to accelerate around 2012, 2013. I was working in the corporate world. I had finished my master's degree. The president of the company was calling on me to climb the corporate ladder and, assume these higher up positions. And I just looked at my life. I was in my mid-20s at the time. I had looked at my life and I just reflected and said, you know what? Is this truly what I want? On paper, it looked great. I had money in the bank account. I had a new apartment. I had a great car. I had all the things materially that one could want, especially at that age. But there was something within me that just didn't feel aligned. It just didn't feel right. And I really, the humanitarian, the altruistic being that lives within my heart really wanted more. And I wanted to help people and make a difference, but I didn't know what that really looked like. And until one day I did, when I was asking for a sign for many, many years, really, or many months, I should say. And I look up at a billboard driving home from my job in Buffalo, New York, and I see the sign, "Are you ready to answer the call?" And it was a very direct message that I could not ignore. And in the right-hand side, it said, "Sponsored by the Peace Corps." And so I went home that night. I Googled what the Peace Corps was, and I ended up applying. And then a little over a year later, I ended up getting accepted, and where I would go and serve as a volunteer, a health and business volunteer for 2 years of my life in Tanzania, Africa. So that was a big turning point for me of leaving everything from behind: my family, my friends, my job, security, or the illusion of it, and now flying 8,000 miles away to Tanzania, Africa, to the villages. So, that was massive. And I would say that still to this day is one of the biggest catalysts to where I am today and what I'm doing and with my life.
That's an amazing story. What were some of the transformative experiences or some of the culture shock about going there? And then when you came back to the States, I also understand that it was also a transition for you. So how does all that tie into where you picked up on your journey to realize that corporate world wasn't for you?
Yeah, the whole experience in itself was absolutely culture shock. You go from having all these modern amenities, all of these really distractions in so many ways, to now being isolated in nature without running water, without electricity, without internet, and now integrating into a community as an outsider. So there was a lot of challenges in that experience, and throughout the experience of 2 years of being there and integrated in that community, there was a lot of challenges that I faced, but equally many lessons that I learned. And one was how self sufficient I truly am, and being able to live off of the land, being able to really return back to my primal roots in this way and really go deep within myself, because it really granted me the opportunity to explore my inner landscapes where I wasn't distracted by the partying and all the other stuff I was doing. I was able to look within and see where I was still holding fear, limitation, etc. And so I was really confronted with myself during that experience. And then, of course, equally coming back from that was reverse culture shock. Coming back from, 2 years of being immersed in that landscape, you can only imagine what that feels like coming back to a consumerist type of society. I was overwhelmed. I was a different person. All my friends were the same. So it was just a unique set of circumstances that then really propelled me to really looking for that diamond within myself, that diamond that was always there, but maybe was clouded up. And that diamond, filled with my gifts, with my passions, with all of the things that I truly desired out of life, and then going in that direction. And so from that point, exploring where my excitement was leading me, which is really the formula, right? Is following
Yeah.
your excitement. And so for me, that was herbalism, that was energy work, that was coaching, that was breath work, that was gene keys, that was all these different types of tools and modalities that then led me, of course, 10 years later now, to be sharing that and teaching that, and supporting and empowering others on their journey.
I'm glad you mentioned the timeline because sometimes we lose track of the fact that when we are going through these immersive experiences, just like you said, it was a process. It took a year before the Peace Corps even accepted you. So there was a year you just sat in that stasis, I would imagine. You're still asking yourself that question, who am I? What am I doing? Why am I here? And then you mentioned about being that diamond, trying to mine out what was deep in your soul. What were some of the things that you did to help uncover the diamond in the rough and to really bring out what your true calling is?
Yeah, that's a great question. Again, a lot of catalytic experiences. One that really jolted me was while I was in Africa, I had a near death experience where I was rafting on the Zambezi River. I shared that in Alex's podcast, I believe. But yeah, really where it was a very intense experience. And I've had a few close calls with death, but this one was something very unique where I was basically caught up in the class 5 rapids and being tumbled like a washing machine and unable to breathe, unable to take in air, and
Wow.
essentially losing consciousness and being sucked into the waves, until I was eventually saved, and brought back to life by a kayaker. But, in those moments, realizing like when you're on the edge of death, right? There's a panic that initially set in, and then there was a peace, there was a surrender, there was,
Mm.
okay, this is my time. But then coming back from that experience of touching death and then being revived, the first thing that came back, of course, is my breath. And from that moment, looking up at the sky, in those moments where I just felt so incredibly grateful, for my body and this life and everything that I have. And that was really seeded into me that the breath was going to be at the cornerstone of what it is I was going to end up actually teaching and facilitating, which I didn't know at the time.
Right.
But that was, in 2014. So now fast forward to 2025, and having done what I've done with the breath alone, it's been such a magical journey. And the breath has been such a key piece of that, because we are literally, we can go deeper into this, but we are
Yes.
literally informing our state, our reality in every second of every day with every breath. And so how do you uncover the diamond in the rough? Well, the breath is the first place to start. And it's a very important place to start, but many of us are unconscious of our breathing.
Yeah, I listened to your recounting of that near death experience on that podcast. I have to tell you, I held my breath. It was riveting. You realize how fragile life is, but how resilient the body is, and how the universe, and whether you want to attribute God or universe or whatever to it, has a specific calling for each and every one of us. And your time wasn't then. Like, like
Exactly.
you still had a purpose. So I've been leaning more into this importance of breath. I want you to, talk into this through your experiences. And you mentioned it before, how much we breathe, take it for granted, and we see it as an involuntary mechanism in the body.
Mm.
It's just something that we do. We just take breathing for granted. So I would love for you, in your experiences in your work, talk about the importance of breath, the benefits of breathing. I did your Beats and Breath app, and you're like, breathe in through your nose, breathe out through your mouth. And I was like, wait a minute, this is different from what I realized. So talk into that too. And yeah, well, I'll stop there on the questions.
No, that's okay. Thank you for sharing your experience. But,
Sure.
at its foundation, breath is really at the core of transformation. And if our breathing is not regulated, if it's not deep, if it's not intentional, if it's not conscious, then we are essentially staying stuck in these unconscious patterns that run our lives, right? So, for example, we've all endured some level of wounding and some level of trauma. That's inevitable. As a human, we all endure something, from when we were born throughout our entire lives. And as a result of enduring these experiences and, these often difficult experiences, our body goes into, our nervous system turns on, and our body goes into a fight or flight or freeze effect, right? So what happens when we experience any wounding? This happens, the emotion of whatever it is we're experiencing ends up, that fear getting suppressed, lodged into the body. Our breathing pattern becomes altered, because if we're in a survival state, we're breathing quicker, we're breathing faster, and even at times holding our breath. And then the body is now in this state where it's locked into a sympathetic state. Over time, if that's not corrected, because we don't have the consciousness or the awareness or the guidance from others to be able to excavate and to transform that experience, that gets locked in as a habitual pattern. So that shallow breathing, that tendency to hold your breath, that begins to become your everyday experience, thus exacerbating the already existing anxiety, stress, and overwhelm that you feel from living in the modern world, as well as from the past experiences you've had in trauma. So this is the trauma cycle, right? This is what we all have inevitably gone through. Now, if you look at a newborn baby, or you look at a very young child, you'll notice their breathing is very much diaphragmatic. It's from the belly. It's really deep and slow. Then if you watch that child grow, you see the breath pattern begin to change as it becomes programmed, conditioned, indoctrinated, and essentially traumatized by the world. Then, of course, when we come back to the awareness of breath and bring intentionality to it, we can begin to unearth these patterns. So what happens when we switch from a sympathetic to a parasympathetic state? Well, our breathing deepens, right? And this is really just the two types of breathing. We can mark it down to these two categories: sympathetic, parasympathetic. Sympathetic's more activated breathing. We'll get into why you can do that and the benefits of that. I personally, when I'm teaching and when I'm bringing this forward to people that have really never explored the world of breath work, I tend to lean toward a parasympathetic state because we've already existed within a sympathetic state every day, every hour of our lives. So the in through the nose, out through the mouth, even rhythms or even slowed exhales, like slowed down exhales, that brings us into a parasympathetic state, thus helping us to reduce, eliminate stress and anxiety, and come back to presence and come back to center. The more we're doing this, the more we're unearthing the stuck and repressed energy that is within us, and we are freeing and liberating ourselves with the breath. What is breath? It's life force, it's prana, it's chi, it's life energy. And so we are giving ourselves this newfound energy, which then essentially pierces through the blockages and the barriers that we've been holding on to. And from that point, we begin to have a different capacity to hold and receive life. If we're in survival, we're essentially continuously in control and force and chase and strive and all of these things. And we can't really think clearly. We're kind of clouded. But when we come back to parasympathetic breathing and we come back to center, we can connect with the soul. We can connect with the higher mind. We can connect with our hearts, and we can then lead our lives from a whole different vantage point. So I know I mentioned a lot. I'm going to stop there because I'm sure there's probably more we can go into, but I want to
Yes.
just give pause to the conversation to be, hopefully digested by those listening.
Yeah. Well, let's go to the small steps first. So, can you take us through, if nobody's ever done this breath work
Mhm.
before, to a simple exercise to get us aware of our breath? Can you do
Absolutely.
that? I would
We
love
can
to.
do a short, maybe 4 to 5 minute breath awareness exercise. And,
Perfect.
if someone's listening to this driving, you can do this with your eyes open. It's not intense breath work, or again, it's recommended if you're at home or wherever you are on a plane listening to this, just close your eyes and just get comfortable for a few moments and just ground your sit bones into the surface beneath you, whether that's a chair, a seat, the floor, your bed, wherever you are, just ground it. Just begin to notice your body. You can do a gentle and slow scan through your body, starting at your head, and just slowly moving down, noticing, observing any tension points, any tightness, any constriction. And just scanning up and down the body. How are you feeling? What sensations do you notice? So now we're going to bring some awareness to our breath. Notice your breathing. Is your breath shallow? Is it non existent? Are you holding the breath? Is it deep? Is it rhythmic? Just notice your breath. Not trying to change or alter anything, but just simply being with what is. And so now you've noticed the body, you've observed the breath. Now we're going to bring some intentionality to the breath. We're going to breathe in through the nose. We're going to breathe out through the mouth and an even inhale and even exhale. So, what I would like you to do is just exhale out all of the air remaining and take a deep breath in through the nose. And slow exhale out through the mouth. 4 counts in, breathing in. And exhale, breathing out. Breathing in, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. And just notice that pace. Stay with that. And as you continue to breathe in that rhythm, I want you to bring your awareness down to your belly, allowing the breath to travel down into your abdomen. And on each inhale, just expanding the belly, breathing life into the belly. And then on your exhale, contracting, allowing that air to come back out and your belly to squeeze in. And just filling yourself up with this life force, giving it back, filling up, letting go. And we're going to stick with this for another 10, 12 breaths, just continuing to breathe deeper, really expanding down into your navel and feeling the energy course through you. Loosening, opening, releasing any tension, tightness, constriction that you've been carrying. Just letting it all go. Giving it back to the earth. A few more deep breaths. Keep it going. And when you're ready, you can return back to your natural breathing, to your natural rhythm. If it feels good, you can keep breathing in this rhythmic way, in this diaphragmatic way. And just notice the difference just after a few minutes of conscious breathing. Notice how you feel. Notice any sensations, any subtle tingling, buzzing throughout the body. How's your mind? How's your heart? Just a simple practice to come back to center. And when you're ready, if your eyes were closed, you can open your eyes and just notice for a moment the room around you. How are you feeling? What's alive? What's present? So there's that. It's just a small little
Thank you.
practice. It goes much deeper than that, though. So we'll keep it
Yeah.
there as just a
Yeah.
simple introductory exercise.
Yeah, I'm going to put a shameless plug in for your Beats and Breath app because I did that this morning. So if anybody listening really enjoyed that, in your app, you not only have your voice doing a lot of the meditations that are there, you pair it with music. So I have two questions. I don't want to lose either of them. One, I want you to talk about how music and breathing is even more powerful. But before we get to that question, talk about, I've heard it, breathe in through the nose, out through the nose. You never do mouth breathing. And you walked us through breathe in through the nose, breathe out through the mouth. So talk about like the benefits of mouth breathing versus not, why you would nasal breathe, why you wouldn't.
So there's different schools of thought, and there's nothing right or wrong about any of it. There's just different modalities of ways in breathing, right? So we'll start with just mouth breathing, in and out through the mouth. That's more sympathetic breathing. That's going to activate you. It's going to, in really, you're bringing in more oxygen. breathing out more forcefully. This is going to send you into an altered state. This is more, holotropic, shamanic type of breathing, very powerful breathing. And for anybody, I wouldn't start there. It's a great way to unearth a lot of deep-seated trauma and wounding and sort of energy that's stuck within the body, and also to alter your consciousness. And it's great to do with a practitioner. We do have some mouth breathing on the app. I love it, but again, it's not the best place, I don't feel, to start. It's more what we are kind of doing. So that's sympathetic breathing. Then we have just in through the nose, out through the nose, right? So that's just pure nose breathing. That's great for really, it depends on the breath pattern. Sometimes I do a lot of nose breathing just with like when I'm doing box breathing, like a 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out, 4 hold. That can really slow down the nervous system. It's good for like before sleep. I do a lot of that type of breathing. But then, of course, what we just did, in through the nose, out through the mouth. So it's using both mechanisms of nose and mouth. It's how I was taught and how I was trained. And there's a lot of benefits to that as well. Now, what I've found between all the 3 different types of breathing is that the in through the nose, out through the mouth, I feel I incur a lot more benefits of having sort of both mechanisms working at once. Now, from a physical standpoint, we can go over physical, mental, emotional, energetic, spiritual. So physically, we are allowing the mouth to blow out that carbon dioxide. And this is going to really support us in improving digestion and improving immunity and really helping us to calm down physically, right? Any physical tension and stress we have. Mentally, it's really allowing us to clear the mind, have greater level of clarity, enhance a lot of neurochemical type of reactions are happening in the brain with serotonin and dopamine, and getting into elevating our mood, turning on that joy sort of mechanism, and emotionally allowing us to clear out anything that has sort of felt heavy or burdensome in many ways. And then, depending upon the breath pattern, that always changes as well with the nose to mouth breathing. Spiritually connecting, I guess, in layman's terms, to your intuition and plugging into that voice that's always speaking, but oftentimes is overridden by the ego. So the longer we're doing that for, right? Generally, I'm facilitating 5-minute rounds of breathing where it's continuous breathing, whether that's a 1-1 rhythm, 2-2 rhythm, 4-4 rhythm, 4-8 rhythm, different types of rhythms. Those will, of course, support us in different ways, but the extended breathing for 5-minute rounds, they really connect you, and it's really powerful in that way. So that's sort of a little bit of, again, what I've taught, what I like to facilitate, and what I find to be easiest approached from beginners to intermediate to advanced. So I like to teach it like that because it can be approached from all levels.
Oh, wow. Okay. So if their breathing pattern is a default to the sympathetic, where they're constantly in this fight or flight mode, do you find like the body's going to be overstressed, that doing breath work is going to help them? And can you actually retrain yourself to breathe differently if you're constantly in a sympathetic state?
For sure. So there's many things you can do. For someone that's in more of a sympathetic, anxious state, which again, I would say is a large percentage of the people on earth, I recommend going and starting with like a 4-4 or a 4-8 rhythm. Sometimes the extended exhales can be a little bit difficult for someone that hasn't really practiced with that. I mean, the yogis, right? And I've trained myself, to get up to, 40 to 50 counts on an out breath, right? Breathing in for like 8 to 10 counts and then breathing out for 40 to 50 counts. Really controlled, slow breathing. So you can train yourself, absolutely. For someone starting out, that a lot of the breath work patterns we have on Beats and Breath, you'll find a lot of 4-4 rhythms. And those 4-4 rhythms are very supportive for anybody. And you can really amplify yourself in so many ways just doing that. So yeah, that's a good place to start.
Well, you mentioned your beats and breath, and one of my questions was talk about the significance or the connection between breathing and music, and how your app was born.
Yeah, so
Whole story.
Yeah, so basically back in 2020, I was just finishing up another certification for breath work. I was going through Soma breath work. Shout out to Soma. They're great, great people over there. And, I'd explored different modalities of breathing. Now, what Niraj was doing was putting together these soundscapes, right? He was a DJ, and so he was putting together these soundscapes with the breath work. And I felt really intrigued by it. I was like, wow, this is super cool. But I'm not a musician. I love music, but I personally don't have the capacity to put this together. So, like I always do, just trusting and calling forth, guidance, show me the way. And I always trust that the right people and opportunities appear. Well, a few months later, my now business partner in Beats and Breath, Johnny Buffalo, kind of vibrated into my field. And fortunately, he was a musical savant, and he had discovered my breath work through a men's circle I was facilitating at. And we instantly hit it off and created what is now Beats and Breath. And, I've been on a journey since pretty much early 2021 of creating together, and what we've birthed now and created in what we call sonic breathwork. So it's not just music, right? So
Mhm.
Johnny comes from a background of classically trained guitar. He's a professional beatboxer. He has a background in trap and hip hop and rock. So we basically created our own original style from a genre standpoint of putting together these really what some might think it's like, wow, this is not meditative at all, but it actually is. Like, the beats go super hard in some ways. And then we have, of course, very slow journeys and quiet ambient type of experiences as well. But originally, like, it was very like powerful beats with the breath. But what we found is it's activating these different energy points, right? What we might call as chakras, with different frequencies and all of that. So we were playing with, and still do play with, different frequency ranges based on the solfeggio frequencies. We play with binaural beats. We get into all different realms of bioacoustics, because really sound and breath are the foundations of creation. And when you understand the mechanisms of how sound and breath not only work individually but paired together, you can create deep transformation within an individual. So we have spent a lot of many hours of putting together very intentional ways of, really pairing these two modalities, and also then taking a theme, right? So if you go on the app, there's different themes. We have over or close to 100 breathwork sessions now, and continuously adding more. And all of this combines together to create deep healing and transformation within an individual. They're not only receiving the sonic frequencies, but then they're also breathing. So that together is just like the ultimate pair. And yeah, we're doing something really cool and innovative, and I just love it. I love doing what I do.
Wow. Yeah. I love the app. I did
Yeah.
the Awaken this morning. I was like, I got done it. And I have to tell you, it was kind of funny. It was time for me to meditate. I'm like, let me check out this app. So I did that. And then I finished the meditation. I was in my living room and I got up and I'm like, I think I'm going to rearrange all the furniture in this room. So it awakened something in me, very creative at that moment. I thought it was very interesting, and it did awaken my spirit to create.
I love that.
What's the connection? You talked about sonic, like music, I believe it was, or like the binaural beats. Talk a little more about what that exactly is. Is that subconscious, or is that something on a frequency maybe we can't hear but that we pick up on a different level? Because I've heard of binaural beats before, but I'm not quite sure what they are.
So this is just the oscillation of sound. Now, I'm going
Mm.
to do my best to explain it, because I'm not a sound wizard like Johnny is. If I had him on, he would be able to go much deeper into this. But I do have a very good basis of understanding. So basically, there's first we'll talk about the frequency ranges. So most music is attuned to 440 hertz, which is what changed in the 1930s. It was 432. Now, there's a lot of conspiracies about this and why that is, and how it's dissonance and not in resonance and all of that. Now, there's a lot of debate about that, but long story short, we tune everything based on the different energy centers we're working with. So for example, a more emotional track that we create, we want to invoke emotion. We're gonna tune to 639. We're gonna tune to the heart. We're gonna tune to this place where we can begin to allow that vibrational frequency, which you're not going to be able to hear fully unless we put isochronic tones in, which we have done in our chakra album. Without the isochronic tone, that frequency is just embedded in the track. But on a deep unconscious level, that's working itself within the heart space. And, there's a lot of brilliant mathematicians and people that have figured all this out on how these frequency ranges work and all of that. And then we go into binaural beats. So in binaural beats, it's this oscillation of these different sonic attunements that when you can hear binaural beats, when you put on headphones, it's like a bass frequency that is being put out, and that entrains your brain. So that puts your brain, again, you can do different binaurals for different brainwave states. We operate on an everyday level in a beta state, right? This is a waking state. Now you can have binaurals that then go drop down frequencies, alpha, theta, delta. Different brainwave states attribute to different states of being, more meditative, more creative, more intuitive, or delta, you go down into those subsonic frequencies, and that's going down into sleep in the dream realm. So you can create all of this just by altering and adding in these different bioacoustics, right? And so between the frequencies, between the binaurals, generally in the breath holds, we have a lot of like bass oscillation going on. With the binaurals, this entrains you to drop even deeper. There's ways of working with music and sound in this way that really create the transformation. And it's really neat to kind of play around with that as well. And then we also we like to use animal totems as well in some tracks where we're using animal sounds or nature sounds. This also supports in the entrainment of the brain. So all of it is really, it's magical in so many ways.
I love that. Back to nature too. Like
Yep.
it's that getting in touch with the primal side of ourselves that
Yep.
we lose touch with because we are so ingrained in technology and in front of our phones and in front of, that artificial light, that just going outside and standing in the sun is so therapeutic. And we forget that we have these free things available to us. And I think I heard you say that on Alex's podcast, was that we forget we had, yes, you can go to an app. Yes, you could go on that, but we have these free things that are really right inside us that we carry around with, and that we have that energy within ourselves. I was listening, and on that podcast, you said something fascinating, and I wanted you to talk a little bit more about that. You said objects are energy vibrating to be a solid. And I mean, I think this idea of energy, that there's energy all around us, there's energy, we can't see it, right? We can't see it, but people emit it. We can feel it in people. And I just started being exposed to energy work and manifestation, and, like that we are all these energy beings. I don't have a particular question out of that, but I would love for you to take the conversation wherever you feel.
Yeah, absolutely. Like at the base level, everything's energy. We're energy. This table, this computer's on is energy. This microphone's energy. It's vibrating at various different levels to appear to be solid, right? And this is what creates the material world, the third dimensional world, with this material and solid. It's matter. But when we understand that, right, we can then begin to play with energy. So if we're talking from just a vibrational sense, right, like Dr. David Hawkins has done a lot of beautiful sort of research and shares this in his books, which is the scale of consciousness and how different emotions vibrate at different levels. So for example, one of the lowest emotions is shame. That vibrates at, like, I forgot his scale, it was 200 on the scale, but I forgot 200. And then you go up the level, right? And you get into guilt, you get into fear, you get into resentment, you get into all of these sort of what we might call negative emotions are on the lower side of the scale. Then you get into neutrality around 500 or so. And then from there, you start going into, higher states. You get into fulfillment, you get into joy, you get into purpose, you get into peace, you get into gratitude, you get into love, right? Which is the ultimate at 1,000. So Basically, when it comes to, manifestation, when it comes to working with energy, we can consciously do that. And again, it begins with the breath. So how I explain, and I actually have a whole video on this, on breath work and manifestation. I'm going to put
Mm,
this in a 2 minute, 3 minute synopsis, is
please.
that the breath is really one of the ultimate tools and hidden tools that we don't really talk about as it pertains to manifestation. Well, what is manifestation? We are always manifesting at every given moment, every single second of the day. We are never not manifesting. We are energetic beings that are always creating, right? But for most of us, we're creating unconsciously. We're looping the same thoughts. We're feeling, experiencing the same beliefs. We're taking the same actions. And therefore, our life looks the same way because life is essentially a projection of consciousness. So your movie that's playing out is the same movie over and over again, and we get frustrated because, like, why are we experiencing the same relationship patterns? Why are
Mm,
we experiencing the same behaviors? Well, if you're looping the same stuff inside of yourself, well, that's being projected out as this movie. And guess what? You're the lead character, you're the producer, you're the director, you're the writer of your script. And at any point, you can change that. Sure, we can get into the idea that we have predestined, things that happen to us as a soul. We choose these things. Yes, we're co creating with our human self and our higher
creator,
self
right.
simultaneously. And so, how does the breath loop into this? Well, first of all, the breath is a way to, one, slow down, come into awareness of what we're thinking, what we believe, what we're doing, right? It brings us into presence. We're not in the future, we're not in the past. We're anchored in presence. And from there, we're beginning to change our vibrational state. So if our vibrational state is at that level of 300, and we're in shame and guilt, well, through the breath, we can begin to not only bring awareness to it, but we can begin to transform and transmute those patterns. We can begin to go deeper into the somatic layers in which we hold those emotions. And as a result of that, we can then allow ourselves to vibrate at higher levels through practice. And so that's why the breath is so key to this whole process, because we change our state. And so manifestation and conscious manifestation is about changing your vibrational state. If you desire the expression of abundance, whether that's through the symbol of love, money, XYZ,
Mm,
then you must vibrate at abundance within, right? As the Bible says, as Yeshua says, seek the kingdom within, and all that you desire will be given unto you. Not in those exact words, but in, somewhere close to that. So it's all about the inward state. We're not chasing outward, we're embodying what we already are. And if we are spiritual beings having a human experience, we are already love, we are already abundance, we are already peace. We just have to vibrate and raise our vibrational level to that point. And from there, we become the magnets to what it is we desire externally. We're not chasing, we're not doing any of that. We're vibrating, we're changing our state on the inside, and therefore creating the life we desire from that place.
Hmm. If someone's listening and they're going, okay, I actually identify with the lower vibrational frequency, shame, guilt, so forth, what are your suggestions for the first places to start, the small steps on that? Yes, it's breath work, but I found, me personally, I know what you're talking about, those where you're stuck in those patterns over and over and over again. And that was a lot of my life. Mine changed when I got a coach, when I had somebody else speak into my life. What are some avenues that you would suggest to people to help them start to awaken this process and vibrate, take those lower vibrational frequencies and raise them?
Yeah, good question. To get super practical, I'm a practical guy. Of course, the breath is the first place to start because
Sure.
it brings awareness to what it is you're feeling in that moment. Many of us were disassociated and we're running away from our feelings. But if someone is consciously wanting to explore this and say, okay, I'm ready to change, I'm having the same relationship patterns, I'm going through the same things of
Yeah.
rejection and abandonment,
They
and I'm
want to
sick and
stop the
tired.
loop. Stop the loop.
Stop the loop. I'm ready to go. I'm
Yeah.
ready to change.
Well, yeah,
And
let's
it's
get off this train.
stop blaming, stop being the victim. I'm time to
Yeah.
come within. Okay. So again, breath to start, bring awareness. Where is it located? Somatic inquiry is one of the best things that we can do. And of course, I'm going to do a quick process here, but there's certain coaches and guides that can support in this process as well. So basically, when you come into breath and come into your body, you begin to identify where you're holding these patterns. And I'm just going to start with an easy one for people to kind of wrap their heads around, which is probably fear. A lot of times we hold fear in the belly, right? And generally this might be, we'll just take the solar plexus, right? Right below the heart in our power center, the solar plexus. So generally when I'm guiding someone, I'll ask them, okay, so you're experiencing fear, whatever the fear is, it doesn't really matter at this point, but where's the fear located? It's located in the solar plexus. Okay. What are you feeling? What are the sensations that are present for you? Tightness, constriction, heaviness. It feels like this dense black ball that's just sitting so tight within my solar plexus. Wonderful. So now that we've identified the sensations that are there, what color do you associate with? Well, I heard the person say it's a black ball. So there's black, it's kind of gray, it's dark energy. Wonderful. So now we can give some sort of vision to it and we can visualize it. What are any textures? Is it sharp? Is it jagged? Right? And now we're getting into the feeling sense of it. So now that we've identified not only what it is, it's the emotion of fear and where it's at in my body, we're identifying the sensations, the textures. Now it's time to go in it, into the discomfort, because all fear is, all shame is, all guilt is, all grief is, any of these proclaimed negative emotions, they're just messengers in disguise. And when we can understand that emotions are energy in motion, they are just energy that's become stuck within the body because we haven't learned how to channel and process it. And it's not trying to kill you, it's trying to get your attention. Now, if left alone for a long time, that can manifest and trickle down into disease and illness. But what happens through this process of somatic inquiry, we identify what it is, what it feels like, we go into it, we breathe into it, and we ask it, what message do you have for me? And, sometimes if someone's really good at feeling and getting into the body, this might come pretty quickly. At other times, it might take some time. What message do you have for me? When did this first become lodged in my solar plexus? And a memory might pop up. Oh, I was 5 years old and I was terrified because my mom and my dad, they were yelling at each other. My dad ended up slamming the door and leaving. And now I have this fear of abandonment. Wonderful. Now we're getting somewhere. Okay, so the abandonment, which is really a core wound at this point, because beneath the emotion is a core wound. There's the common core wounds of rejection, abandonment, betrayal. You can loop shame and guilt and in that into core wounds. There are also emotions that kind of on the edge, but for the most part, we all have these core wounds. So now what are we doing? We're working with the smaller version of ourself that experienced that event, which is then we're getting into inner child work. What is the little boy or girl within you feeling? What does she want to communicate to you in this moment? So there's layers to this process, and I've
Yes.
just walked you through a little bit, but this is the way we get to the core. And when we get to the core and we begin to bring love and acceptance to that little boy or girl, we begin to bring love and acceptance to that wound that we experienced,
Mhm.
then it doesn't have as deep of a hold on us, and we can begin to liberate ourselves. And from there, by unwinding just that energy alone, all of the patterns and behaviors that were essentially sabotaging our life and our relationships, they begin to dissolve. And those limiting beliefs that we were thinking about ourselves, where we're unworthy, insecure, inadequate, those begin to dissolve. So it's a
It's
process,
a
right?
process.
Healing is
Yeah.
a process, but this is the way in, and this is the way in which we essentially reclaim our power and our wholeness.
Mm. I appreciate you saying that this is a process because sometimes, I mean, me personally, I thought change is a one and done kind of thing. It's like I wanted it over. Like, why am I still doing this same thing over and over again? And often we want to put a band aid on what the problem is rather than forcing ourselves to go deeper and deeper with it. One thing I really appreciate about listening to you and how you talk is you're very intentional with the use of your words, where you talk about how our heart space and how we're leaning into it, or even just the process of identifying fear. I identify fear, and then I heard you say, wonderful. And how we would take words and we shy away from them because they're not. Like you would think fear is like, no, I don't want to, I don't want to go to this fear thing. It's not wonderful. But yes, it is, because as we embrace those areas that we need to work through, it becomes liberating. Like you said, emotions are energy in motion. Talk about how using breath, you can now that we walk ourselves through the process of healing, that you can use your breath as a tool for expansion.
Yep. Beautiful. And thank you for the reflection. So with breath, we're essentially breathing new life into our body, into our soma, into our spirit. And if we've been trapped in these patterns that have been looping for so long, everything starts with that and going into that body, right? And so now that we've gone through this process, we're taking, and I left a few steps out, but what we want to do essentially is we want to then get ourselves into that envisioning that light or the symbol of peace, of safety, of security, and anchoring that then into our body. So oftentimes I'll ask my clients, if I'm taking them through a somatic session, is say, okay, so now that we've identified all that, what does love, what does peace, what does safety, what does security represent to you in a symbol or a color?
Mm-hmm.
And, we'll just take a color, for example. Oh, light blue. Wonderful. Okay. So what I want you to do now is I want you to breathe this light blue energy into your solar plexus. I want you to feel the arms of your inner child just wrapped around you and feeling this deep support. Now we're getting somewhere, because now through the visualization of breathing this symbol or this color into it, we're giving it new life and new meaning, and the energy begins to release, and we then begin to feel lighter, more alive. And so this is a very intentional process that when we can do this, and oftentimes I'll tell people, do this every day. Just sit for 5 minutes, breathe that energy into yourself, because you are literally planting the seeds for something new to grow. And that's why the breath is so incredibly powerful, is that we can literally anchor in the frequency and the vibration that we desire in any given moment through that intention and through consciousness.
I love that you talk about like how we can expand ourselves. I know we both know Ryan Sprague.
Yes.
Ryan was on my podcast last year, I think it was. I want you to elaborate on your experience with using not only breath work and visualization, but some of the other tools that you use. So Ryan is he's known as the conscious cannabis coach. Talk a little bit into that and what your experience has been and what you found.
Yeah, Ryan and I have a project called Breathe with Cannabis, and we host these workshops virtually and in person. And wow, cannabis and breath work. There's a lot of anybody listening to this, you can listen to Ryan's episode on cannabis, because he probably breaks it down very deep into
it
the
was a great
intentionality
episode.
of cannabis.
He did.
I've been working with cannabis as a teacher and a plant medicine for many years, and bringing intention and consciousness to that plant. It's a feminine plant, right? And that plant really is deeply somatic. It brings us into our bodies, whether we like it or not. And when we can really drop into meditation in that, we could start to feel all the aches and pains and the tightness and tension we're carrying. And so then with the breath, we're then infusing life, and we're beginning to release and expand simultaneously at the same time. Honestly, it's the perfect marriage. Again, I don't think we need any plant medicines, but I am a big proponent of them because they really help to drop the protection layers of the mind and
Mm.
help you to get deep really quick. And what I've seen from serving and supporting, guiding, thousands of people at this point through that space alone, my gosh, the transformations that I've seen, the healing that I've seen. Again, I'm not anybody special. I'm just someone using my gift of
Yeah.
facilitating these processes, but the healing that people experience are unlike anything I've experienced. I mean, I've dove into medicine spaces, mushrooms, ayahuasca, all that. I mean, sometimes it doesn't even compare how deep this truly goes.
Talk about a cool experience. What's something that, like a example or experience that comes to mind? Pick one.
Every time we do it, we have someone that heals some big piece of trauma they've been
Mm.
working on for years and then haven't been able to get to the bottom of it. Or, someone that has just a profound release and then experiences the unconditional love of source, of the
Yeah.
universe, of God, of
Wow.
connecting with ancestors, it's just like endless every time. I mean, I have hundreds of testimonials of people saying,
Yeah.
wow, like that was the most powerful experience in my life. And it's the reason I keep showing up and continuing to do it, because it's not only fun, and what Ryan and I are a big proponent of and what we share is that healing can be fun. When we bring
Mm.
seriousness to healing, we're taking it from the approach that we need to fix what is broken, we are going to be spinning in loops of healing. When we're approaching healing from a joyful sense and saying, okay, I am whole as I am, I'm essentially, all I'm doing is releasing what's in the way of that wholeness, that changes the mantra and narrative of our healing journey. It doesn't have to be hard at that point.
Yeah.
Now we can embrace and lean into the challenges, into the discomfort, because we know we're just revealing more of our power and more of our wholeness as a result. So it's a beautiful space to be in, and I'm just grateful to be facilitating this work.
Wow, the power of words. I mean, as you were speaking, when you did, I can feel it in my body because I like to tune into the power of words. So as you were talking, you said, what we would say would be view healing as we're broken and we need to fix something. When you said that, I felt lower, I felt heavier. But when you said that healing, we can bring joy in your face, you just feel the shift. I mean, I felt the shift from something that's really heavy to something that's light that I look forward to, because who doesn't want to heal from things, from traumas, big T's or little T's? Who doesn't want to heal from those things? You know what I hear when I listen to you? Intentionality. Everything you do is threaded through with intentionality. Was that always something that was part of your being, or was that something that you came to realize? And how do you keep yourself focused and intentional in what you do?
Oh, beautiful. And thanks for picking up on that. Like words are spells, right?
Hmm.
Words are magic. And that's another part of the manifestation process. What are we speaking into our reality? And for me, when I'm sharing, I'm constantly inviting in. It's not my human self sharing. It's just allowing myself to be connected to my intuition and to the higher mind, and allowing that to speak through me. And through that intention alone of me sharing that, before I go into any conversation, before I go into any day, I ask spirit to speak through me. And whatever relationship you have to whatever deity or spirit, I just talking to my higher self, and I invite that energy into my words, into my actions, into my beingness. And I know that whatever's meant to be said and to be shared will come through in a way that's being spoken from a higher place, rather than me, my human self, my ego getting in the way. I just know that whatever's being delivered through me as a conduit and a channel, it just comes through. So that's, again, the intentionality of being intentional is how I really like to live every day. And it's been practice. It's a practice of letting go. And if I were to summarize really the journey of this human experience, it's the art of letting go.
Hmm.
It's the art
Surrender.
of surrender. It's
Surrender.
literally becoming a vessel for the light. And as you lighten yourself from the burdens, the barriers, the blocks, the wounds, and the traumas, your vessel can be filled up with the light of source, creator, God, universe, whatever you want to call it, and allow that to be your everyday lived reality. Now that's time, it's practice, and for me, I've continued to go deep within myself and to look at and examine different sides of the prism of my being to ensure that I can show up in full integrity and intention with everything that I do, because there's not something that I teach, share, express that is not from a walked and lived place within myself.
Mm. So living with intention. We want to do that. The desire is there to do it moment by moment by moment. What do you do for yourself, or what are some practices that you do when you realize that, okay, at a moment something happens and I'm either in a state of not living in intention, or, you kind of get rattled a little bit? What are some things that you do to bring yourself back to center? And I'm sure the answer is going to be breath work, but what if we don't default to that, or to help ourselves get back there? What would you suggest?
Yeah, it's a good question. First, pause. This is a big teaching in the Gene Keys. It's a triple flame practice, which is pausing multiple times a day. So the practice of pausing actually interrupts the pattern of whatever it is you're going into. So if there's a challenging situation, what do we often want to do? We want to react. So we're reacting, whether that's through our words of sharing our frustration or irritation, or it's reacting towards something and then taking it into ourselves. This energy of reaction causes a chain of events that causes us oftentimes to spiral out into stress and anxiety and all of that. So what happens when a challenging situation comes up? We all face them. Pause. Okay, we're there. We're paused. Now that we're paused, what do we want to do? We have an urge to speak out. We have an urge to do this, X, Y, Z. Let's breathe. Okay. So there's 3 words that I always share with people: pause, breathe, recalibrate. Even just literally saying those words, you are recalibrating, you are reorientating yourself from reacting to now coming back down to center. So pause, breathe, recalibrate. Do the action. Pause, take a deep breath, recalibrate. Do that multiple times. That will be reset. Now, this is a practice that happens over time. In Kabbalah, right, was another powerful system. They teach pause, and then you say, "What a pleasure." And this is counterintuitive to what might be happening where, someone's breaking up with you or you're going through some extreme challenge. What a pleasure. Wow, to say that. Thank you. What a pleasure. Well, this is a way of, and this is another deep conversation, but a way of clearing what could be an intense situation, and not through spiritual bypassing, but through the sense of inviting in that, this is a moment, this is a catalyst, this is an opportunity as being presented to you to elevate vibrational states. And how will I react to this? Will I invite this in? Doesn't mean it needs to be easy, doesn't
Right.
mean that you can't have grief, doesn't mean that you won't go through a process, but you're saying, what a pleasure, thank you for this experience, because now I get to know myself deeper through this experience.
Yeah.
And your soul chose this experience at this moment. And so these are just like things that I use all the time. Again, it doesn't make life, at times it can be very difficult, but at the same point, it does really invite in a way of living that is a little bit less resistant, I should say, a little bit more effortless in that regard. And it really helps you to work through some difficult challenges.
Yeah. Again, doesn't it just come back to the words that we tell ourselves and how we
Yep.
speak them? And that I've heard, I think it's Jocko Willink. No. Yeah, Jocko Willink, when he encounters something, whatever, he goes, good.
Yep.
It's the same variation of that. But I love the thanking the universe, like, thank you for this opportunity. Because isn't it so often, like, I've heard people say, well, when I was in the midst of this, I didn't see that it was a good thing. And then when you come out on the other side, it winds up being a good thing that happened. And to acknowledge it while you're in it allows you to embrace. I love the idea, and I've practiced this myself, of relaxing and releasing.
Yep.
And this idea of stress, I was listening to a meditation a couple months ago, about a couple months ago, and the quote was, "Stress arises when I resist the present moment the way it is." And so
Mm.
now when I go into a stressful situation, I ask myself, am I creating this stress? And most of the time we are creating it. I'm just resisting where I am at that moment and then flipping my thought from, instead of creating the stress and resisting it, to going into, like you said, this place of surrender. Talk about what surrender means to you, because surrendering, the first thought a lot of us that comes to mind is like police. I'm surrendering, I'm giving in. It's something that's negative. Talk about what surrender means to you in a positive sense and how that can help us vibrate at a higher frequency.
Yeah, the art of surrender is a beautiful process when we understand what it is. Surrender is not giving up. It's giving all of what it is you're holding on to a greater source. It's allowing yourself to be emptied. In emptying, in that process, you receive more light. That light is illuminating the darkness, the shadows within us, and allowing us to bring more awareness to the parts of ourselves that have been repressed, suppressed, and abandoned, rejected, betrayed. And we continuously, in this process of giving all of that up to that light. And as a result of that, we are filled back up and we essentially rise from that place. It's not taking action. And of course, what a lot of us think is that we have to, give up ourselves and give up who we are, right? But it's really just a process of letting that go to be filled up. We've heard the words let go, let God, right?
Hmm.
We are surrendering our will for divine will, for God's will, for creator's will, for whatever we want to call it, because that intelligence knows better than we do. Oftentimes, from the mind standpoint, that we are forcing ourselves to think that we know best. But at the end of the day, we really don't. So it's being humbled to know that we can flow with life's intelligence. And when we learn to align ourselves, to attune ourselves to the rhythm of life, to the intelligence of life, then from there, we can be filled up and we can then make conscious decisions along the way to what feels good, that's aligned with our highest passion and excitement. So, this is the process that we're refining and always going through.
Yeah. Talk about how stress blocks us from surrendering and hearing that voice inside us, that creative voice that might be trying to come out. And how's that affecting us when we're living in that state of stress?
Yeah, stress is, I mean, it's marked as the ultimate killer, right? Because
Mhm.
it's not only,
Right.
affecting us physically and really affecting the function of our body, our organs, our tissues, our entire body system, but it's also affecting our mind. And what happens when we're in stress? Oftentimes we get into obsessive thoughts, overthinking, and we're not able to actually see clear. We're in tunnel vision and our perspective is not widened. And so stress also we can equate to control, right? When we're in stress, we want to control more. We want
Hmm.
to ensure that this is happening this way because we know it to be this way. And it's just like it's a spiraling out energy that just
Yeah.
creates loops and loops and loops. And it creates this narrow banded view of reality. But when we can widen ourselves, we can open ourselves, we can loosen the tension, then from that point, we can see a little bit clearer. We can see the wider perspective. We can get on top of the mountain and see the 30,000-foot view versus the very small view that we have in the alley that's working through
Hmm.
lots of fog and we can't really see our feet in front of us, right? And so it's so important that again, from a foundational level of working with breath every day, even just for a couple minutes, because it clears that and allows us to see our lives from that higher perspective rather than from that lower, narrow, banded view.
Yeah. I'm so excited. I'm excited because I love breath work and I love the healing power that is within it. I mean, anybody listening, if they haven't tried it, it's profoundly changed me. It's changed your life. It's also changed mine as well through breath, through music. I don't think we touched too much on the words and story work and breath. We did at the beginning. Do you want to expand on that a little bit as we start wrapping up our time together?
Yeah, I mean, again, I feel like with breath pairs with any modality, right? Whether it's story work, parts work, inner child work, shadow work, all of these different somatic work, the breath is going to weave itself as an integral part of all of this because it's the regulator. It brings us back to center and then allows us to process and think clearer again from the higher mind. And so as we're, even speaking, right? You can see the way in which you're speaking. When you're slowed down, you're clear, you're more direct, you're more precise. But when you're anxious and you're stressed and you're in this hyperventilated state, your words come out and you don't know what you're saying and now you're causing more destruction with your conversation and everything else. So it just slows down and it allows you to really come into that centered present state. So no matter what you're working with, what you're doing, that breath is so integral into all of it.
Hmm. I want to give you a couple of minutes to talk about your book and who is it for, how did it get born, and what it's about.
Yeah, absolutely. So Master Your Breath, Transform Your Life was born a few years ago. I don't know if you have video here, but I have a copy right here. This is the book, Master Your Breath, Transform Your Life, Unlock the Hidden Power of Breathwork to Heal, Awaken, and Prosper. And so, this book was dreamt up a few years ago. I knew that I wanted to bring more just groundedness and practicality to what breath is, right? And how breath can support us in these different phases of our life through healing, through awakening, through manifesting, and through expansion. And so I go into the book. It's a shorter book, but I originally had, about double the amount of words written. But, something in me, I was sort of guided to simplify it and to bring it into layman's terms where anybody who picks this book up can read it and have an experience where it's not only reading the words on the page, but have a direct experience where we put the practices on the app. And now you can go and do the practices that are involved in each of the chapters. For me, I love teaching, I love sharing, but at the end of the day, it's all about direct experience. If you can't have a direct experience and go through this and actually feel the changes, then it's not really doing anything. So I've connected in that way as far as a teaching and then practices. But overall, it's interesting, as I said before, I ask Spirit every day to work through me. And so with this book, I've had notes written and all of these things of how I wanted to go about it. And then one day I just locked myself in a cabin for about a week and just channeled the whole thing and wrote it. And that's kind of how I operate. And so this book is for anybody that is stressed and overwhelmed, that wants some level of reprieve and wants to live their lives in a different way, knowing that there's something more, there's something bigger for themselves, and they want to really step into a greater version of themselves. And this book is really for anybody that really wants to deepen their healing and transformational journey. So I'm excited about it. It just launched a few months ago, and it's just getting out there word of mouth and getting into the right hands of the right people. I trust the process.
It's a full circle to the hero's journey, huh? That we started with. And
That's it. That's
we
it.
all have that. What's really interesting about the hero's journey is that we all have that within us. We all have that calling. It's just whether or not we slow ourselves down and listen to that voice that's in there. And one of those ways is through breath work to allow that voice to come to the surface and listen to it. We all hear the call. It's whether we take it, as you said, into action, into a practical step. As we're coming down to a close, I like to ask a couple of the same questions. And I want to ask you, is there any question or topic that you wish I would have asked about? And how would you have answered it or expanded on it?
I would say that, off the top of my head, no. But yeah, I can
Same.
maybe share a few closing remarks, just for anybody listening to this and just tuning into what wants to come through right now and just taking that pause, taking that breath. And the first word that I hear is super beings. And this is a term that was used by one of my favorite authors, John Randolph Price. And he has a book called Super Beings. But what does it mean to be a super being, right? We often live as in the context of our limited selves or our small selves because we've been, trained, conditioned, programmed, indoctrinated, imprinted by society to live in a small, condensed, tightly knit way where we fit into these boxes and labels and, try to wear these different masks and identities in which we deem to be appropriate by society standards. But what happens when we break free from those boxes and those labels and we step out into an expanded point of view, a bigger, greater, extraordinary version of ourselves, and allow ourselves to go against the grain and to live authentically, to live really deeply entrenched within our own authentic soul expression, because everybody has a gift. Everybody has these unique skill sets, these talents, these abilities to be able to support not only themselves, but to support others, to be of service, to really be aligned with higher will, with your higher purpose, with your soul's mission. And from that point, to be able to live a life of fulfillment, of prosperity, of abundance, of love, of freedom, of knowing that you can have your cake, you can have it all, you can eat it too, and you can really step into a new way of living. And it's all possible through the power of your breath, through the power of your thoughts, through the power of your belief, through the power of your words, through the power of your actions. And all of this dictates your reality. So the more that you become aware, become conscious of who you are in every given moment, that you are always changing, you are always transforming, you are always going through this process of metamorphosis, that you get to discover a new version of yourself every single day. And the more that you shed the layers, the blocks, the barriers that have been in the way of your true expression, the more fulfilling life becomes, the more abundant life becomes. You begin to see the outer reflections of that in your relationships, in your health, your vitality, in your career, in your creative expression, in all that you are. And so claim yourself in this now moment as a super being, because you, as that super being, can do it all. And there is no limitations. There is only limitless expression. It's the infinite expression of the divine that is working through you. So invite yourself, invite that light of the creator to work through you. Claim into reality that life is great and it's only getting better. Claim into reality that you are the source of your supply. Claim into reality that you have everything that you need and more at all times. And allow that then to manifest, to be created, to be fully anchored into your now moment, into your now reality.
Divinely inspired.
And for
As,
that, we take a
as,
breath and we say,
as we,
Aho, thank
yeah,
you.
welcome. As we close, what is one small step someone can do today that's going to help them change their tomorrow?
Just become aware. If you're listening to this now, just observe, notice, take account of all the different actions, patterns, behaviors. Breathe, take 3 breaths, breathe into that. And just notice, what area of my life am I still playing small? What area of my life am I still a victim to circumstance? What area of my life am I still living in fear? You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to have all the solutions. All you need to do is bring awareness to where you are right now. And then all from there, just taking very small steps every day to breathe consciously, to change one thought, one belief at a time. There's no rush to change it all in this moment. Just step by step, breath by breath, transform your being from the inside out. And overall, in the next few months, 6 months, year, you'll begin to see a new reality take shape, both within and without.
Again, divinely inspired. Thank you. Christopher, thank you so much for the gift of your time. Everything people would need to reach out to you would be in the show notes. Any closing remarks?
No, I just want to say thank you, Sue, for everything that you're doing. Appreciate everybody that's listened to this podcast. If you want to know more, again, like Sue said, Beats and Breath app, you can download that, begin breathing intentionally deeper every day. If you want to know more about breath, you can you can get my book, Master Your Breath, Transform Your Life. And I also have a free course on my website on christopheraugust.co, which is called Master Your Reality. It's a 7-day free course that helps you to become the creator and the master of your life and your reality and change it from the inside out.
I love it. Thank you so much for the gift of your time. This has been amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I value your time with me, and I seek to make every moment count. In order to make lasting change in your life, listening is usually not enough. So I want to ask you, what practical steps are you going to put into action today as a result of listening to this podcast? Remember, any step, any action, no matter how small, starts your journey to a big win. And if you're not sure where to get started, reach out to me and let's have a conversation. Until next time, love yourself, then love others. Peace.